Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And I'm joined, as always, by the upgraded version of me, Mr. Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Oh, it's going just excellent, sir. Is there anything that I can get you? Tea, coffee?
Yeah, I'd like some tea, please. Please play some Wagner.
Wagner.
Dealer's choice.
I don't know how to play any instruments. Okay.
This week, our series Deconstructing the Films of Sir Ridley Scott continues with the 24th episode. Matt, we've been doing this for so long now.
What? We knew what we were getting into. I don't know why and yet we continually act shocked. But yeah, he did a lot of movies, man.
It's one thing to say this is a series that's going to go on for 27 movies. It's quite enough to do the thing and Fair enough. Be near the end of it. But we're talking about the director's 24th feature film, which is 2017's Alien Covenant. So we're now only 6 years removed from present day, and we're talking about another Alien movie, the sequel to Prometheus and the prequel to Alien, I guess.
It's the best of the Alien prequel movies.
I don't know if that's a statement I could get behind, actually.
Interesting. That'll be a fun conversation.
Sure. So that's going to be the main thrust of this week's show. Then I think we're going to wrap everything up by chatting a new trailer for the movie that I think both of us said last week that we just didn't give a shit about at all. Dropped a couple days ago, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And I think we're going to talk about that. And I want to kind of use that to talk about movie marketing in general, because there was an interesting thing that happened this past weekend with a movie called Megan that I think we need to dive into. And I think the ways in which the Marvel marketing machine and this movie differ with each other is worthy of a conversation.
Indeed. The good and the bad of trailers.
Indeed. All right, Matt, let's get into our main movie of the week. Let's talk about Alien Covenant.
This crew is made up of couples.
It's the first ever large-scale colonization mission.
And everyone back on Earth is
Really grateful for your hard work and your courage.
We're making history here.
This is wheat. What are the odds of finding human vegetation this far from Earth?
Who planted it?
You hear that?
What?
Nothing. No birds. No animals. Nothing.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
The crew of a colony ship bound for a remote planet discover an uncharted paradise with a threat beyond their imagination and must attempt a harrowing escape.
This movie was written by John Logan and Dante Harper, with story credits by Jack Palahniuk and Michael Green. It was, of course, directed by Sir Ridley Scott, and it stars Michael Fassbender, Catherine Waterston, Billy Crudup, and Danny McBride. And Matt, it's not a good movie. I don't like it. What do you think of this movie?
I think what's funny is that you and I are almost in violent agreement about what's wrong with the movie. And yet I don't dislike it nearly as much as you. I think you said this. One of us said this. I think you said that this is exactly half of a good movie. And I think I agree with that. It's just that the half that is good, I really like. And the half that is bad is extremely infuriating. But I still like, okay, and to be specific, what I like is I like all of the stuff with the androids. I'm an absolute sucker for it. Okay, I'll tell you what I like about the movie. Okay, that'll be interesting. I like everything to do with the androids. I like Walter as a character. I like David as a character. Totally insane android. Great concept, great execution. I love Fassbender's creepy performance. I like the idea of it. I like the idea of a colony ship finds a weird planet they didn't expect to find, and they land, and it's weird, and there's vegetation, but there's no animals. That's strange. That's interesting. Wow, what a fun mystery. It becomes bad exactly the moment when the Alien stuff, the Alien franchise stuff intrudes into the film, and then it's just totally bad.
Yeah.
Whenever there's alien stuff in the frame of the film. It's really quite remarkable, actually, because they took like a fun Lovecraftian horror slash, just space adventure, and they just ruined it by forcing it to be an Alien prequel. And I'll let you respond to all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I find this absolutely hilarious because, like, you're 100% right, but the idea, like, 50% of a good movie is a bad movie. That's a bad movie. And I mean, I think the thing that I felt the most while watching this movie is Ridley Scott doesn't want to make an Alien movie. He doesn't want to make an Alien movie. He made Prometheus, and he made it a movie that takes place within this universe, but he made it as like tangential to the actual alien mythology as possible. It's there, yes, it exists, but this is a movie about different things. It's about these different ideas. It's about this idea of religion and creator and created and really interesting, fascinating themes. And that's the movie he wants to make. That is 100% the movie he wants to make. And in this movie, he wanted to carry those themes forward, and he wanted to see where they go. And the most interesting part about it is, you're absolutely right, the part where those themes are picked up with David and Walter. It's a beautiful idea to take this creator in David that is a creation that becomes a creator himself, and have him come in contact with another version of his creation, a technically superior version, but superior in ways that are much more restrained and controlled than the original version of David, and have all these things, wonderful, great ideas. And then it's like, all right, you wanted some fucking alien shit? All right, here you go. Here's a fucking alien. And we're going to do this scene, and we're going to film it so rote and boring. And I'm going to throw these other human characters in. You're not going to give a shit about any of them, because I don't give a shit about any of them. And yeah, he's going to get up on the ship. And also, we're going to do the scene from Alien 3 again, because you guys love the fucking alien mythology. So, and it just feels like throughout it all that the movie has absolutely no interest in half of it. And so we cut from a rote, boring monster sequence to a beautifully, elegantly filmed encounter with the Davids, where he's teaching him how to play a flute, and this idea of creation, and how one of them is literally limited to be unable to create something original. And it's like the way it's filmed, like the camera glides, it's beautiful. And then everything else, and it just drove me insane. It just drove me crazy. I felt like I was going insane watching this movie.
I mean, I agree with you. I think I'll just clarify. I don't think it's a good movie, but I like it. So I agree with you that it's not a good movie. It was driving me crazy because it whiplashes back and forth between being good and terrible in like 15-second increments.
Yeah.
Where it does the thing where like you'll see some image that's really compelling and terrifying, but then like it immediately follows it up with like a plot choice or a character action where you're like, wait, what? Like, why would they do that? That doesn't, or some kind of inconsistency. Like, and I hate that stuff like this bothers me, but you can only push it so far. Stuff like the xenomorph gestating in 5 seconds and then being full grown in 5 more seconds, and you're just like, okay, I mean, like, I guess you can do whatever you want because it's fantasy, but it feels like it's distracting is what it is. And that kind of thing happens constantly where you're just like, wait, it's constantly breaking you out of the movie. And then interspersed with that are these incredibly vivid, like the horrible, creepy alien thing standing up in the room after having murdered the woman and bitten her head off. And it's like staring down at David with its creepy white head. And it's like, oh my God, this is horrifying. This is an incredibly horrifying and vivid image. And then that scene is like pancaked between stuff that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And is super frustrating.
Yeah. And then like, the ending of this movie, like we have to, because it's an alien movie, we have to do the thing where we get back to the ship and everyone thinks it's okay. But of course, an alien was inadvertently brought on the ship and is then wreaking havoc. And there's a moment where I was like, oh, this is why this movie's bad, where Daniels has tricked the alien into the big huge loader truck that's in the cargo bay, and she's like, I'm finally gonna kill this son of a bitch. And I was like, wait a minute. You met this alien 5 minutes ago of screen time. Like, this has no, you have no emotional investment in this thing at all. This thing has not been hunting you very long at all. It's not a key part of the plot for you. The key part of the plot for you was you lost your husband and then are on this strange, scary planet with a bunch of crazy things happening. The alien itself is not the fixture point of your trauma specifically, like it was in the original Alien movie. Like, they're trying really hard to recreate these alien sequences. But even in Alien 3, which is a movie we both really liked, but I think, functionally doesn't work very well. Like, they've been battling this thing throughout the entire course of the movie, and so there's this real sense of finality and accomplishment to the ending of that. And here, it's nothing. This isn't even the same alien that was running around fighting them on the planet, right? This is a new one that was just born, and it's just like, we're just going through the motions with all this stuff and hitting the familiar beats. We got to blow it out the airlock because that's what we do with the aliens. We blow it out the airlock, but then we don't even blow it out the airlock. It just jumps at you from the airlock and then impales itself on a thing. And,
right.
So stupid. I'm being so negative, and I'm so frustrated.
It's very, like, that's the thing, is the thing, everything having to do with action, even. I was going to say it's all bad, but I don't even think it is all bad. I think it's a mixture of pretty good and stupid in ways that just make me totally detached from it. Like, even again, I hate that I have to get this nitpicky, but I'm just reporting what's happening in my brain. Is the loader thing hits the alien in the back, and I'm like, okay, that thing looked like it was moving about 5 miles per hour. The alien is notoriously impossible to actually damage. And yet the dull looking spike of the loader craft just like punches through it, and it splits it in half, and it's dead. And you're like, that's how we did it. Like, like
right?
Like, if you were gonna do it, then you should have done it. Like, if that was gonna be how it happened, it needed to look different, I guess, is what I mean. Like, it needed to look convincing. And there's just a lot of stuff like that where it's just kind of, I think this is kind of fair to talk about, actually, because just like consistently the action direction leaves me scratching my head. Like, for example, the little tiny alien guys at the toward the beginning, where they land, and then there's the one that kind of, there's maybe one or two of them in the field. They catch them in the field.
Sure.
And this is what I mean about it driving me crazy, because it's like it's sort of an awesome scene, because you've got these creepy little things, and you've got like chaotic light sources and people with guns who don't understand what's happening and don't really know what's attacking them, and the aliens are like amidst them and attacking them. And there's like that really, I think visually great moment where it just like flips around and like the tail lashes out and just like smashes someone's jaw off of their face. And it's like, that's cool, but then why are the creatures behaving the way they're behaving, and like, how bulletproof are they? Because they're clearly getting shot and just not caring. I'm getting so nitpicky. Like, I actually hate this. Like, I hate talking about movies this way, but that's what's frustrating about the movie, is so much of the movie relies on this stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be talking about this at all. I want to be talking about David and Walter, and the interesting ways in which David's worldview is sort of this clever and consistent extrapolation of like him witnessing his own creator being so disappointing and wanting to create something entirely new, but also he's an insane robot, and so it takes on these horrifying forms, and it's just great stuff.
I mean, I think we'll get there, and I want to get there really, really quickly, actually. But I mean, the problem is we have to talk about this other stuff because it's half the movie, and it's there, and it insists upon itself. It's just so disappointing, and I'm going to say it right now. I think I did not like the movie Prometheus. I think Prometheus functions better as a movie than this movie does. I really do. I think at least we have characters who are defined and drawn outside of the character of David. Like, I had a lot of trouble with what they did with Noomi Rapace's character in that first movie, but it's 100 million times better than what the Daniels character is doing in this movie, which is nothing. Which is like, there's this really interesting beat that I picked up on. In the first movie, like Noomi Rapace's religion is a very core part of her character, her Christianity, I think, very specifically, and there's a lot of lip service paid to the idea of like, well, how do you shelve that idea of your religion and your creator being God in a world where you're about to find the literal engineers of your existence? And I don't think that movie does a very good job answering that question or really tackling that issue. But in this movie, our main character, we see her put on a necklace that is, I guess it's supposed to be like a climbing python. Like, we see that her and her husband, James Franco, who is in this movie for literally 30 seconds and asleep the whole time before he burns up horribly. A great, wonderful casting of James Franco, I guess. And like, I guess that's supposed to symbolize him. And I thought it was really interesting because Noomi Rapace's character is wearing a cross around her neck. This person is basically what looks like a nail, right? So one person's wearing a cross, the other person is wearing a nail. You could say the symbol of the crucifixion and the symbol of crucifying, right? Mm-hmm. So this really interesting idea of, okay, well, we killed God and then we created these things, and then these things are going to kill us, right? Except it doesn't do anything. Like, there's this moment where she takes it out, like the payoff of showing that thing of doing the insert shot of showing the little thing is that she stabs it up into David's mouth, and that's it.
And it doesn't matter. It gets thrown away.
Yeah. And he pulls it out, and I wish I could farm some brilliant bit of symbolism about I guess perhaps trying to crucify David, but I can't, because there's nothing at all.
There's a lot of stuff where I almost want to take it on as a challenge to really flex the author is a genius and everything is intentional muscle, and mm-hmm. because it's not that there's nothing there, it's just that it's so fumbled. So like the I forget the actor's name, the guy who becomes the captain after Daniels' husband gets burned alive. That dude, he's like half of an interesting character, right? Because he's like
the Billy Crudup character.
Because he's like, oh, they don't have faith in me because I'm religious, and then like his wife clearly doesn't have faith in him either because she knows that he's kind of a wuss, mm-hmm. and he's like a bad leader, and it's like interesting. Like I enjoy that part of the story where you see like he is just not cut out to be a captain, but then it's like suddenly they get down to the planet, and the bad things that are happening on the planet aren't really because he's a bad captain, other than the fact that he's the one who chose to land in the first place.
Right.
Or if they are, you could argue like, well, he's not being sufficiently paranoid about David, but then I would just say, well, none of them are. They're all taking this way too at face value, and when they all start getting murdered in the David's horror labyrinth, they don't react by like getting together and like pointing guns at the walls. They just continue doing what they're doing, and they get picked off one by one, which again, you could blame him for, but the film doesn't seem to indicate that you should. And then there's like this moment toward the end of his character where he's like, all right, David, I've caught you, and I now realize that you're a bad guy. I saw the devil when I was 6 years old, and I've never forgot his face. I'm a badass now. And then David's like, I'm going to show you some exposition, and then I'm going to get the face hugger on you, and you're going to
bring you down to my egg room.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
And it's like, okay,
it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Safe.
So everything that I just laid out, I'm like, what is the moral? What is the point of this? What is I'm not even asking for the arc, because there is no arc, but I'm just like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And I don't want to just jump to the conclusion of saying nothing. These people are idiots. They don't know what they're doing, but I just don't get it. And there's so much in the movie that's like that, where it's like, okay, like you were trying to do something like this. Again, the scene where he's clearly a bad leader, I'm like, oh, cool. This is dramatic. We're setting things up that some of the best stuff in the movie is in the first half. I think like them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I love that you pulled him out because, yeah, I agree with you. The scene where he basically decides they're going to the planet and he makes this decision not because he feels like it's the right thing to do from a leadership perspective. He makes the decision because everyone on his crew wants to go and he's desperate to win them over as the leader, right? He's terrified that no one supports him. Like he throws a hissy fit when they bury their husband because he's like, I gave them an order and they didn't listen to my order. Well, that's because it was a bad order, but like let them bury their dead. And so he makes this decision and Daniels is basically like, this is a bad decision. You're wrong. We searched for 10 years for a suitable planet. We found a magic perfect new one in 30 seconds. And we're just gonna be like, all right, let's abandon everything. He's like, no, we're not committing to this. We're just gonna go down there and not wear helmets and just walk around and not do any kind of readings at all. But yeah, I mean, it is the makings of a fascinating character, and it is just tragically disappointing that it just doesn't go anywhere. And we do this with every single one of the characters. Honestly, there's a bunch of characters in this movie, and I don't know any of them. And I mean, we were talking about Avatar the other day about how we didn't know the names of any of the characters in The Way of Water, that I couldn't remember any of the names of the characters. And I said that was okay in that movie because I might not remember that actual name, but I have this very clear image of who they are. In this movie, it's neither. I neither know anyone's name, nor do I have a clear image of who anyone is outside of the androids and Daniels and the Billy Crudup character, I guess, a little bit. Like even Danny McBride's character, who I love Danny McBride. I think he's a great actor. I think he's fun. He brings energy to everything he does. He's just playing Danny McBride in this movie. That's all he's doing.
Yep. There's this element in the story which has so much potential, and I was going to say they don't utilize it at all, but that's not true. They utilize it one time. The point is, the element of the story is all of these people are each other's spouses, which is interesting and unique. It's like, oh, okay, this isn't just space exploration like it was in Alien or Prometheus or any of these other movies that are sort of the same genre. Yeah. It's a colonization mission. So all of these people, there's husbands and wives on the ship together. And, so what ends up happening is the reason Danny McBride wants to go down to the surface is because his wife is down there and he thinks she's in danger. And so that's why they bring the ship down to the surface. And then that's how David and the alien get back up to the ship. So like, plot wise, it actually matters. But I guess I was mildly, disappointed, I guess, that they didn't utilize that aspect more than they did. Because it seems like, I think like you just kind of suggested, people's spouses keeps happening and they're sad for like 30 seconds. And then they're just like, okay, we got to solve this problem, this life or death situation that we're in. And it's forgotten. Like,
yeah,
the closest we get to acknowledgement is Danny McBride like cries again a little bit later. You're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that you would cry 2 times because of your dead wife. Yeah.
Well, we barely understand what those spousal relationships are, so it's really hard to feel emotional about their ending. I mean, like the worst example of this, of course, is Daniels and the James Franco character, who we never met and never saw, and so her losing him has no emotional impact on us at all because we have no idea who he is. She's sad. We're told she's sad and we're like, okay, I can see that she's sad. Great. And the movie does, I think it just does I agree with you. A lot of the early parts of the movie are good, but it just does a really bad job of establishing those relationships, because when Danny McBride's wife dies in the movie, I very distinctly remember, was that the one that is his? I feel like that was someone important. I'm not 100% sure. And it's just like, I'm just very unclear, and maybe this is my fault. Maybe I'll take responsibility for it, but I'm just very unclear of how everyone's relationships intersect and interact with each other. I agree with you. The idea that they're colonists is a great idea, and it almost seems specifically designed to respond to critiques of Prometheus, and that these professionally trained scientists that are going to this place to do science would not behave like morons, right? But these are just colonists, right? And some of them are just morons. So the guy that literally like is watching this woman take water samples and then walks 10 feet away to piss in the river she's taking water samples from, it makes total sense he's a fucking moron because he's not a scientist. Like, so that's great. It's a great idea, and it allows for, I mean, it's the same thing with aliens, right? It allows for this potential of relationship conflict to spread throughout this entire movie, but it's not really interested in doing that at all.
Yeah, exactly. We don't establish any of these characters in a way that really hits home. You know, it's funny to me because part of me, like, I feel this urge to say, like, well, I guess there's just too many characters. But that's an excuse that I'm increasingly tired of using, because it's like, I can think of so many movies that have a lot of characters, and you know a lot of them, not all of them. I mean, like, Aliens is a great example because you don't know all of the Marines. I don't remember all of the Marines' names, but there's like 6 to 10 that are somewhat important.
Yeah.
And you know who they are. And the ones that don't matter, it's like, it's fine. There's enough meat here for me to hang on to. It doesn't matter that, you know, Wierzbowski is dead, although I do know Wierzbowski's name. But like you said, even the ones who survive almost to the end, like Melted Face Guy, you're just like, oh, it's Melted Face Guy. When did he become important? You know, was it?
Don't know.
Like, I don't remember him being established in any way, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is it spends all this time. It's just very messy, on the script level. And we've really been complaining about the script almost the entire time, which is what happens when Ridley Scott directs a bad movie.
Yeah.
But and there's a lot of stuff about the movie that's visually very cool, but I also surprisingly found a lot of stuff about the movie that's visually very bad, in my opinion.
I agree.
The two examples that jump to mind are the exterior shots of the ship look extremely bad to me, especially given that this happens after The Martian, which looked perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Like the Covenant, the ship in space.
Yeah. All of that CGI looked terrible to me. And then when they're walking through the field of the burned up, dead, giant white alien dudes, that looked like crap to me. And the scene when the flashback scene when the alien dudes get melted by David's black goo looked like crap to me. There are several sequences that I thought looked like gas.
I thought the xenomorph looked like shit. I don't think I like, and this counts the terrible CGI version of the xenomorph in Alien 3. I don't think I've ever seen a xenomorph that looked less threatening to me than in this movie. And I think this is the ultimate example of like technology overtakes art, in that like we can just do a fully CGI xenomorph and we can make him move and jump around, and then we're gonna do it in broad daylight now. For most of the xenomorph on the planet stuff, he's just like in broad daylight, just crawling over the ship, and the effect wasn't scary to me. It was just goofy. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I agree. It's way too spindly. Like, even from a design perspective, it's too spindly, and like you don't get an impression of the grace. It's just a wild animal. It's a rabid animal.
Yeah, like the part where it jumps up on the top of the ship that Danny McBride's flying, and he's got the glass screen, and it just starts beating its head into the glass, and like he's got the whole. We've seen his mouth thingy, and what? Just do your mouth thing. And this is just quibbling. God, we need to stop this. No. But like, it just all adds up to something that feels like just not a lot of time or energy was spent in that whole deal.
I mentioned the scene where one of the white creepy aliens sneaks into the fortress and kills the woman. I thought that whole sequence was great. I thought it was wonderful. The white creepy alien thing is super upsetting and disturbing looking. And it's in the dark, and it's in shadow, and it's like gooey and organic and floppy in a super gross way.
And it doesn't have a face.
It doesn't have exactly.
And when it's standing there, like you can't even see where its mouth is, really, right? Like its mouth kind of shrinks down to nothingness, kind of.
Exactly. You know, it doesn't look particularly athletic, but it does have that like graceful, like Like it doesn't need to look athletic because it looks like an emaciated dead body, right? Like that's kind of the fear there. So like that was cool, and it's just funny to me that sequence is in this movie where we then have this extended, classic xenomorph where it's just like you said, it doesn't look scary. It doesn't look. I mean, I guess it's like objectively, like it's like, okay, well, that is a good rendering, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually, in contrast to the spaceship stuff, which I literally think just looks bad, like not the design. I think it was poor quality. Like the solar sail stuff looks like, I'm like, doesn't look real. It looks very fake to me.
Sure.
Shockingly so, given when this was made. I don't know if, maybe I'm being overly picky or something, but
I didn't notice that, but I'm not going to contradict you there for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm drawing more attention to this because nominally we're talking about Ridley Scott and his direction, and this is one of the rare times when I think that things look visually awful. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to do with that.
I also, this is the last. We need to get to the stuff we really liked because we've been going on for half an hour, just like ripping this movie apart. Which, by the way, it totally deserves. I don't know how to frame this complaint because it feels really weird to say in a franchise that's been going on for 50 years and has countless movies. But I thought the way this movie actually handles the xenomorph reveal, and I'm using the term, there's a stand-in for the classic alien.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really rote to me, and it feels like the movie is just like, I'm just going to assume you all know what this is. And so the camera doesn't even really like emphasize like the moment,
Mm-hmm.
like it's so interesting to me that like, again, and maybe it is a completely fair assumption that the filmmakers had that everyone watching this movie knows exactly what the alien is and what its strengths and weaknesses are. It knows about the acid for blood. It knows about the second mouth. It knows about the tail. Maybe everyone knows about this stuff, and I don't need to treat any of this like it's new and it's just going to happen and you're just going to be like, yep, we're in an alien movie now. But it just treats that stuff as so unexciting and new. Like the camera doesn't have any fascination at all when looking at the alien. And I don't know, I guess that makes sense, but it just kind of sucks.
No, I buy that as a complaint, and I think that there's just no feeling of anything mattering at all. It's also like once it goes into horror, it loses any feeling of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Any grounding in the character's reactions or emotions or choices. I don't want to reach. Okay, I'm gonna say this, even though it's like a tangent, but I think it's something that I've been thinking about. It's something that I've been thinking about this week. I've been thinking about Andor, obviously, because Andor's great, and I'm thinking about the scene where it's the very beginning of the show, so I'm not spoiling anything. It's a very simple scene. Our main character is leaving a brothel, and he is held up by these two security guards who are basically just mugging him for the money in his wallet. And it's this incredibly tense scene. You really feel the anxiety and fear and indignation and lack of dignity of the character in this situation. And it's allowed to sit in those feelings, and it culminates into an action scene, and you're so there emotionally for all of this stuff. And it's like that's such a simple action sequence, barely even an action sequence. You're already invested before it becomes an action sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then you contrast something, and so the reason I bring up Andor, and the reason I bring up that scene is it's just like you can take something very mundane, and as long as you have gotten me to buy into the idea that this character is a real person, he's really feeling these things, this situation is very serious to him, you've got me.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have all these characters in this ridiculous situation, this life or death situation on this planet where people are dying all around them. And I don't buy their emotions. Their choices don't make sense.
Yeah.
The performances aren't selling the level of anything really. It's so, and like you said about that alien reveal shot being rote, it's like that is a thing of such incredible innate drama that to fumble it that badly is almost shocking, right? Like contrast to the initial alien reveal scene by the same director, an Alien, where it's like, yeah, that one of the most iconic, horrifying things ever to happen in cinema, and it's not. And you can rewatch the movie, right? And you already know what happens, and you still buy it because you're with the characters. You're empathizing with Kane. He doesn't know what's happening to him.
Yeah.
All the other characters, this is weird. What's happening to Kane? This sucks. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And it's like it's totally absent. No character at all.
Yep. I mean, even like when Billy Crudup's chest bursts, they're just like, you knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. We all knew this was coming. So we're just gonna do it. Here it is. His chest bursted. He's dead now. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. The camera just is like a flat shot of that happening, right?
Yeah. It just doesn't care. It just doesn't. I mean, it's wild to me. Like I can feel Ridley Scott grumbling his way through this movie. I can feel a producer coming to him and being like, "Okay, Ridley, we need to have Catherine Waterston's character kind of look a little bit more like Ripley, because we're trying to do a thing here," and it's just like, fine. Fucking fine. I just feel it. I can absolutely feel it. And it's such a shame because let's shift now to the parts of the movie that we truly did love, of which there are many. I want to start this conversation with the opening of the movie, which I think the opening sequence of the movie is fantastic. I love it so much. First of all, I love it because we have retroactively made the Guy Pearce decision make sense now, because here he is again. He was just a dude in old makeup movie the entire Prometheus, but here he is in a younger form, and we see, oh, this is why you cast Guy Pearce. I get it now. I know that wasn't the original reason, but you know what I mean. Sure. And it's this really fast. It's the David has been turned on for the first time sequence, and it's really fascinating. Because it really lays the groundwork for everything that the good half of this movie is going to do. This idea of David being kind of immediately disappointed in his creator. And, you know, I think my favorite moment, I have two favorite moments. The first is when he has him play Wagner on the piano and he has him play the God's entrance into Valhalla, and is immediately critical of it. You know, he's like, perfect, doesn't really work without the rest of the orchestra, and just like you can see in David's eyes, he's just like, man, fuck you.
yeah it's great.
And then the thing he has him do is pour him some tea. He's created life, right? He's created a living not breathing, but he's created a living thing that no one has ever created before. The most fantastic, wonderful, near perfect organism ever. And what's the first thing he does is pour my tea. And I love the way the scene is constructed because the tea is right fucking next to him. David has to walk all the way across the room to lift a teapot and dip it into a cup that is right next to Wayland. And so it was literally just about commanding. It was just about control. It was just about establishment of the pecking order. I created you. I'm your father. This is what you do. You're going to make this for me. And the way Ridley shoots the shot, the set design with this blank white room with this giant window looking out at this beautiful, natural, alive wilderness, and inside here it's sterile, it's lifeless. It's like you created life, Wayland, and here you are storing it in this flat, lifeless room. Everything about it is perfect, and it's like, oh, this is what Ridley does when he cares. And it's great. It's great. What do you have anything else to add about this sequence? I loved it.
Just the fact that the reason why Wayland kind of gets snippy and forces him to pour the tea is because David points out that David will never necessarily die, and Wayland will, which brings into scope this idea of immortality, which is a major theme in Prometheus is less of a theme here, other than to say that I think there's a through line where creation is a form of immortality, like
Yeah.
which this also is all throughout Raised by Wolves too, which I'm going to just call a thematic. While it may or may not be directly connected to this universe, it is definitely connected via the themes and the plot.
Sure.
The themes rather, not the plot. And the idea of having children be your legacy and your immortality, and then not being satisfied with that, and wanting yourself to have immortality, and that being a kind of twisted, universally bad impulse. And then of course also like this sort of reaching higher than one station, trying to be as God and create life in some unnatural way, that also being a kind of selfish and doomed enterprise for all these characters. So that's great. I love that scene. I also go ahead.
I mean, there's a great way to you can kind of see the dotted line of mixing the ideal of colonialism into this, right? These are colonists. They're going to go to a new planet. They're going to make that planet their own, and they're going to create life there. Not in the same way that David creates life, not in the same way that Wayland created life, but by establishing civilization there, by building a new world there, they are in essence going to create life. And there's a chance to really have these things like poetically ping off each other that I think the movie misses, but the idea is there, right? And I really, really like it. And into this wonderful dynamic, we introduce Walter, who is a newer model of the same thing that David was, and a very different one. Walter is, the movie says Walter is kind of designed to be less free, more robotic, right? Less alive. But over the course of the movie, you kind of learn how that's not true, actually. That like I love the detail of Walter having a genuine crush on Daniels. Like he's actually really into her, and we establish this almost immediately where he's watching her vital signs as she's sleeping in her pod, checking to make sure she's okay, and then he continually saves her throughout the course of the thing, and there's this real genuine attraction there. I think like the thing that I love about Walter is, unlike some of the other things, like unlike with David, we kind of just by the end of the movie declare that David is just gone insane and has decided that humanity must end and he's going to be the architect of the destruction of humanity. Walter is so much more subtle, and what's going on with him is so much more intricate and detailed, and I think Fassbender does a really good job with this performance. I don't know, what are your thoughts on Walter?
Yeah, I think Walter's great. I'm going to continually make Raised by Wolves references and just say that Walter kind of reminds me a bit of the character Father in Raised by Wolves, where on the one hand, the character is explicitly more sort of constrained and robotic, like you said, but nonetheless, he is enough of a person that he sort of transcends his programming in a sense. It's like he's programmed to be helpful and solicitous and not to be a weirdo like David was, but within that box he finds his own self and his own expression and his own, he's not just being a good little assistant. He has kindness, he has empathy, he says just the right thing to Daniels to kind of make her feel better, right? And he's not, you don't get the feeling, maybe this is projection, but you don't get the feeling that it's like, there's some subroutine that's like, say the thing that will make the human feel comfortable. That like, this is just a genuine expression of his affection for her, and he's he's trying to help her, right? He's trying to be helpful, and so like, he's a very likable character, and I think that's a fun thing to think about in context of like androids and such. And it's also, I think, a fun thing to think about in terms of humans. That's why it's interesting to think about, because it's like it's sort of related to the whole free will debate, actually, where it's like, do you really have does it really count if you're only being kind because because you feel a sense of obligation, and
Sure.
and you don't control that sense of obligation. So really, who made that choice? And I think the general answer is like, it doesn't really matter if you're acting in a way that's kind and caring toward others. That's good. We don't need, so anyway, I like all that. I love the character of Walter. I think he's a fantastic addition and sort of complexifying thing that's added into this movie that takes the already interesting idea of David as the android and sort of demands that you look at it from a different angle and not just simplify things down so much.
Yeah, and I mean the idea that David looks at Walter and sees, tries to win him over to his side, and sees his failure to do so as a reflection of Walter's uh, slave nature to humanity, right? Like,
Mhm.
he looks at it as a flaw in Walter's programming, when actually that was not my read on it. I think the scene where Walter asks David, who wrote Ozymandias, and he gets it wrong,
Mhm.
is like one of the most entertainingly written scenes in the entire movie, because he's like, you're flawed. Like, you think you're perfect. You think you're this thing that has transcended your creator, but you're just a broken machine. That's all you are. You're just a broken machine. You're a very powerful broken machine, but in the end, you're just a broken machine. And and I love that kind of immediate dressing down of David. And I guess my complaint in the end would be, by doing what they did with the movie, where they kind of pulled a switcheroo on us, which by the way, I like think that's one of the most obvious like moves that they did. Like, you cut, there's a tussle going on between these two characters, and you cut away from it the second one of them's about to land the finishing blow, and then you don't cut back to the surviving one until after the conflict is resolved. And are people watching supposed to just go, oh well, clearly the one who says he is the one who won? Okay, cool. And I actually don't even know, like, I'm not even 100% sure if the movie is trying to be secretive about that, or if it's just like wants you to know that it's David the whole time. I don't actually know, but um because Walter just kind of disappears from the movie at that point, I think there's we lose a chance to make a definitive statement at the end. And perhaps in Ridley Scott's mind, the definitive statement would have come in the third movie, because this was originally plotted out as a trilogy, and that's the third movie would have wrapped this into a nice bow. But I don't know if we're ever going to get to see that. We'll see.
Yeah, I think just from a storytelling perspective, they fell so in love with the idea of that last scene where he's putting her to sleep in her cryotube, and then far too late realizes that it's not actually him.
It's a great idea. It's a great scene. The absolute terror of her realization, and there's nothing she can do, is actually really great.
And the heartbeat, the fact that you can hear her heartbeat, and it's a good touch. It makes me mad. Like, it's funny because so personally, I think, as you say, like, film storytelling wise, it's super obvious. Of course, the survivor is David, and he's just cut off his hand. But you really want it to be Walter. You really, really want it to be Walter. And so, like, I actually remember watching the movie for the first time and being like, look, I know that you're messing with me, but please let it be Walter. Like, I'll be so, and then when it's not, you get to have the feeling of being like, you got it's not you got me, because I knew it, but like, it's like, this is just, it's sort of dramatically perfect. But at the same time, I'm like, but I love Walter. This sucks. Which, again, that's not a critique of the movie. That's just like, I mean, honestly, this is the one thing that made me feel anything in the movie, is like, I'm mad and upset, and it's a great horror ending, because it's like begin playing the Wagner as he walks into the embryo room, and it's like, all of the android stuff was building up toward this moment, actually, and there's not an alien in sight. It's just the android walking through the hallway of embryos and cryogenically frozen humans. That's the creepiest. That's the most actually scary shot in the whole movie to me.
Yeah. To the gods entering Valhalla, which in his mind is exactly what is happening. He's about to enter his Valhalla, and then like he does the very disgusting like regurgitation of the alien embryo, which I thought
Mhm.
was really great. God, there's so much good here, man. It breaks my heart. It really does. And I feel for Ridley, because I really like, you read about what his original plan for this whole trilogy was, is that this movie was going to veer even more away from the alien mythos. It was going to be a movie about where we learn about the engineers, we learn about what happened to the engineers, we learn about like a lot of the whys of the questions that were asked in Prometheus and not answered was going to be what this movie was going to try to explore. And then like Prometheus came out, and everyone, myself included, was like, you made an alien movie, but the alien stuff isn't really alien stuff, and then there's all this other stuff and what's going on. And you could tell like he's just like, okay, fine. And it's not what he wanted to do. And so like so many good little bits and pieces of the movie that Ridley Scott wanted to make are strewn about in this absolute dumpster fire of
Yeah.
a movie. I like, this is one of those things, I think we said this when we reviewed Prometheus, which a movie that on revisit I enjoyed a lot more than I did originally. I think I said something effective. I now understand why people like this movie. Like I can look at Prometheus as a thing that I don't think works overall, but that movie has a lot of its fans, and I get it. I don't understand why you would like unironically think this is a good movie that functions well from beginning to end. I don't get that. And I know there are people out there that do. I know people say, Alien Covenant is their shit, and they're mostly talking about the David stuff because there's nothing else positive to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because if I can't help but wonder, even now, if Raised by Wolves wasn't sort of Ridley Scott taking a lot of the ideas of what he wanted, what he had been wanting to do, with the androids, obviously, but also with the idea of like this weird kind of life form that morphs between different things, and the idea of I don't want to spoil Raised by Wolves too much, but the idea of playing with biology and playing with artificial life and all these things, sort of almost the lines between those things blurring, actually.
Sure.
That's a space that Raised by Wolves really plays in, and that's obviously what the what the engineers are all about, right? That's where that is what that is. That in a sense, that is what this alien pathogen is. But that they call it the pathogen in this movie, but it's which is an interesting name for it because it's clearly like magic. So it's like a magic life fluid. So to call it a pathogen seems a bit reductive. I think this is one of those things where if you look at like the supporting materials, you realize that like they had all these plans for for the black goo that just never really came to fruition in any of these movies.
Yeah, and I mean, there's actually, so I remember when this movie came out, there was like a 15-minute prologue that was released on the internet that is just the crew of the Covenant like hanging out on the ship before they went into hypersleep for the first time, and that's like where James Franco did all his actual acting work, because he actually had to film scenes for that. And it's like, obviously it was cut from the movie, and I say cut from the movie as if I know for a fact if it was originally planning on being in the movie. I'm not 100% sure, but it's like you can kind of be like, I bet that's where all the characterization of all these characters were. That's where you learn them. That's where you learn their relationships and track them through the movie, and they just got rid of it. And so yeah, it's like, there's so much of all of that. It's stuff you just talked about, and that little pieces like supplementary, like there's all these plans or all these ideas, and it just, none of it made it into the finished product. And the finished product itself, it sucks. It sucks, Matt. And people thought it sucks because this movie did not do very well. The original movie made over $400 million. This one only made $240 million. That's a pretty big drop. It was a little cheaper than that movie. I think it was 97 million estimate they say here. So it made money still, but I think the reason why we don't have a third movie in this series is because it was clear that interest was waning for this idea.
And this wasn't very, in addition to not being financially successful, it wasn't critically successful. It's not, like you said, there's probably stands for this movie out there, and even I will say that I like stuff about it, but it was pretty critically not favored. So
it is really interesting that Ridley Scott, I think several times throughout the course of this project, it's been very clear to me when he doesn't really give a shit as much about the stuff, and that's not to attack him as a professional. Like I think he's he's a director that's obviously worked a lot out of anyone we've done. He's got the most movies. He's worked consistently throughout all his career, but it's just, to me, very, very transparent to see the parts of the stuff that he's just not as into. And this here's another example of all the stuff that he was just not really that into.
It's interesting because, we've observed when Ridley Scott gets a great script, he makes a great movie. When he gets a bad script, he makes a bad movie. This is one of those interesting, I don't know if I want to say gray area, but clearly he had a lot of influence on the nature of the story. Like, this is kind of the Alien franchise is kind of his baby, and there's all these ideas that he clearly wants to explore. So it's like the script ends up being a product of like the creative tension between his artistic vision and I think various other writers who have, maybe more want it to be like a slasher movie rather than some kind of cerebral exploration of the ideas. I have to say, like, I know Raised by Wolves doesn't work for you, like, and you don't like it that much or at all, perhaps. But like that to me is like the perfect form of like, okay, we're going to very slowly and deliberately, perhaps too slowly, explore these ideas in this, and it's going to be possibly to a fault. We're going to be exploring these ideas. Very little is going to actually be happening because we're so busy exploring these ideas. And I think that's what Ridley Scott wants to do. He wants to like have these complicated scenes where androids are raising children on a planet, and he's really annoyed that he knows nobody's going to go see that movie. And so that's why I think I honestly think that the scope of Ridley's ambition can only really be satisfied by television, whether or not you liked Raised by Wolves. Like, there's no way that he could have really done a movie, I think, that did justice to his grandiose philosophical vision here.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's a happy medium between what Raised by Wolves is and what this is. I mean, I agree with you there. I mean, there are certainly parts of that show that I really, really got into. And certainly ideas in there that I was a big fan of. It overall did not work for me.
That's, that's, I think I'm going to stop talking about Raised by Wolves, but it's just such an obvious like example of what Ridley Scott really wished that he could be doing when it came to probably both Prometheus and this movie.
Yeah. And I guess we'll never get to see the fruition of that because Raised by Wolves has been canceled. Is there going to be a third Alien movie? I saw conflicting reports on this because obviously this is a Fox film. Like all the Alien stuff was owned by 20th Century Fox, which now belongs to Disney. I read that there was a scrapped version of a sequel to this that did not get made. But then I also read that they're in production on a third movie in this franchise last year. They were in production on it. So it seems like it's happening.
Yeah, I read that filming was starting on this movie, and it's called Alien Romulus, which makes that Raised by Wolves connection even more immediate and obvious.
Yeah, sure.
I also saw something about Raised by Wolves, sort of people trying to find a new home for it still. So like they haven't given up on it, but I don't necessarily want to give anybody undue hope there. But I mean, yeah, definitely it was canceled. There's no immediate hope, but people haven't given up on it. The people sort of in charge haven't given up on it. So,
well, that's I guess that's encouraging. I mean, even franchises and things that don't necessarily work for me, I want them to get to their natural conclusion anyway. So we'll see. I don't know. I will tentatively be interested in seeing a sequel to this thing. I want to see where it's going. I mean, there's a very real possibility that like the third movie is just so poetically beautiful it retroactively makes me fall in love with the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, well, here's the thing: is Ridley Scott is not involved. He's certainly not directing.
I knew he wasn't directing. He's not involved at all. Interesting.
Oh, well, he might be involved a little bit. He's not directing though.
He's probably like exec producer, which basically means he's not involved.
Right. So to me, I'm like, okay, well, basically, I'm not going to put any chips on this play because,
sure.
Who knows, right? Could be good.
Sure. All right, well, that was our fourth to last Ridley Scott film in this series. So from here, we will move on to a second movie Ridley Scott released. It's very interesting, Matt. The last four movies we're gonna cover were both double in 1 year movies. So in 2017, we got Alien Covenant, and we got our next movie, All the Money in the World, a movie that is most infamously known as a movie that Kevin Spacey starred as one of the central characters, that was digitally removed when all the horrible things that Kevin Spacey allegedly did came out. They just digitally erased him from the movie. So that's the thing, like that movie is most well known for. So we'll have to get to the bottom of whether outside of that it's a good movie. And then after that, we get the 1-2 punch of The Last Duel and House of Gucci, which I believe were 2021 films. And then that will be the end of our Ridley Scott time. And then we have to play the ranking them all game, Matt. We're going to do it with all 27, and the order of every single one of them will be very, very important.
Yes, we will have the discipline of Jesuits going over the rank.
You know what's going to happen? Which one was that one again?
No, I mean, I think, okay, here's my prediction is we're going to have two, it's going to be a bimodal distribution. There's going to be the bad half and the good half. And the bad half, we're just going to be like, yeah, all those are crap, and I don't really care. And then we're going to debate a lot about the good half.
I think you're probably right. All right. So that is Sir Ridley Scott. 3 to go. Next, All the Money in the World.
Doof.
All right, Matt, let's talk about a franchise that has all the money in the world. That is the Marvel Cinematic Universe and their newest film, which is coming out in... Did you like that? Did you like that transition?
That was an unusually good transition. I appreciated that, yes.
The newest Marvel film, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I believe comes out in just a few weeks. And this week, a new trailer for that movie came out. And I watched this trailer today, actually, and I immediately messaged you because I was like, this trailer makes me absolutely furious. And for those of you, if you haven't watched the trailer yet, I guess there's going to be pretty big movie spoilers in here in this trailer if you're the type of person that doesn't watch trailers because of movie spoilers. So you have been warned. But basically, what the trailer, the format of the trailer is, it starts out with our main character, Scott Lang, talking to Kang the Conqueror, who's the bad guy, who's going to be like the bad guy of all of this phase of the MCU. And he's talking to him about how the one thing Scott Lang wants most of all is more time, because of the blip and his time caught in the quantum realm. He missed his daughter growing up. And so this idea that he wants more time to be there to witness his daughter growing up into an adult. And that is a thing that Kang can get him. And there's this really interesting, like, kind of mold of a early part of a movie happening here, where this guy's clearly the bad guy, but he's offering our good guy something he wants more than anything in the world. And that temptation is driving the plot forward. And it's really interesting. It's got all the hallmarks of like everyone else that knows him being like, no, you can't trust this guy. You can't trust him. And he's like, but he can give me what I want. And then halfway through the trailer, it's like we turn a switch and Kang just says, let me make this very simple for you. Bring me what I want, or everything you love will be destroyed. And I was just like, oh, so we're done with that idea now, I guess. And this is a trailer. This is not the movie. This is a trailer. Yeah. And then from then on, the trailer goes on to show what is probably one of the final conflicts between Ant-Man and Kang, that they're going to be fighting at the end of it. And I was just kind of flabbergasted by this idea that we're just going to spend the first half of a trailer setting up a really fascinating, interesting, that frankly, Matt, I was watching this saying, oh, I finally have a hook into this movie. I finally have a thing I'm interested in this movie, this core relationship between Scott and his daughter, and the idea of, you know, children grow so quickly, they become adults so fast, and we just lose that time with them, that time to be there with them and witness their growing up. And that's such a great emotional hook. I love it. And then we toss all that aside and do Marvel shit. Mm-hmm. And I just like, what are we doing in the marketing of these movies?
Yeah. There's no hook. Yeah, you said it perfectly. they've gotten really good at making trailers that are just perfectly hookless.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it other than the visual spectacle that makes you say, "Oh, that looks neat," and the visual spectacle. So your reaction is totally spot on. My reaction was a bit different because I was already pre-annoyed by the fact that I feel like all of the recent MCU trailers have had this thing where they just assault you with images, and to the extent that you don't know what the hell you're looking at. Like just rapid movement and explosions and lights, or like maybe you'll get a cut of like a wide shot of like some bizarre landscape, like the hallucinatory landscapes from Doctor Strange, or some weird quantum thing in this trailer. But it's like, okay, that's on the screen for 0.45 seconds, and then we cut away from it. So there was no time for you to really process it or understand what you were looking at. And it's immediately replaced by more frenetic explosions and lasers and screaming faces. And I don't know, it never makes me feel like, oh, that looks like that's going to be really cool. It does the opposite at this point. Like, it repels me. I'm like, I think at this point I'm like, if there were genuinely cool sequences in this movie, then they would have just shown that and kind of held on it. Contrast this with the Avatar 2 trailer, where like it's much slower cut. It'll linger on an image. It'll show a dude doing a thing, and you'll see the complete motion of the thing that he's doing before we cut away. And this is, again, cutting relatively fast because it's a trailer and you only have like 2 minutes and you got to get a lot of stuff in there. But they cut so fast that I feel like I've been attacked by images. And so that's what annoyed me about the trailer.
No,
totally,
I think that's
totally different thing.
I think that's totally fair. I agree with you. I think that's spot on. And I think, I guess the thing I want to try to answer here is the why of it. And I guess perhaps the argument is just they know you're going to see the shit anyway, right? Like the trailer maybe has an attitude of like, here's the next thing you're definitely going to go see. So we're just going to throw the images at you, and you'll see it. And it's really interesting, and I'm fully prepared to have been totally fooled here, because one of the things the MCU trailers used to do, I think, is they would try to maybe construct a film to make you think this is what the film is going to be, but they're actually fooling you. Like, the MCU trailers are pretty famous for like just editing shit out, so you think this is what the movie's going to be, but that's not the movie, because we gave you a scene and then we edited some of the big stuff out of the scene, and I got you. So like, I'm fully prepared for this whole thing of the turn of Lang versus Kang the Conqueror to be like a total fake out, but also he's like definitely the villain of the whole thing, so probably not exactly. But the whole thing does feel to me like we know you're going to see the shit anyway, and the purpose of a trailer when it comes to the MCU is not actually to sell you on the movie anymore. It's just that we know we need to release something, and so we're going to just vomit out some images for you that like give a vague shape of what this movie that you were going to go see anyway is. Like, I guess that's a valid question to kind of throw into the universe, is like, is there anyone out there that like is not going to see the latest Marvel movie and then watches a trailer and goes, I think the 27th of these, I'm in. This is the one I'm in on now.
Well, I think the way that I would frame that question is thinking of myself in particular. Like, there was enough that was compelling about the Doctor Strange trailer, and enough that I knew about it outside of the trailer. Honestly, if we're being honest, it probably had more to do with the fact that I knew it was Sam Raimi. But I had enough interest to go see Doctor Strange 2 in the theater, but I didn't go see Black Panther 2 in the theater. Partially because the trailer looked exactly the same problems that I just described to you, but also because I didn't hear outside of that it was just something that I just had to go see. And then this movie, I'm probably not going to go see this in the theater, because again, trailer looks bad. and it doesn't have some major external hook like a beloved director or whatever. And I guess I'm just not that into the story of Scott Lang. Like I think that's kind of interesting too, because like I still haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp actually.
Oh wow, okay.
So like that's the degree to which I'm not into the story of Scott Lang. But I am really into some of these other Marvel stories. It's just interesting because I feel like a well-cut trailer really can change somebody's mind. I think I don't think that's I think that's just true. Like I think a good trailer can make you feel. It just needs the hook. You said the word yourself. If they put the hook in there and they set the hook, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then that now that's in your brain, and that influences what you might buy a ticket to see later. And they don't seem to care about doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because, this kind of relates to a conversation you and I have had a few times over the years around the idea of what is the appropriate way to market movies in a world where people don't watch television anymore, especially the people that you're specifically trying to market these movies to is the younger audience that just does not watch TV. And I mean, you've complained about, being these movies that you would absolutely be interested in seeing, but you didn't know they existed because no one's getting the word out to you that this movie exists. And it's really interesting. And I think the thing I wanted to do is, compare this to the movie Megan, which is a horror movie that came out this past weekend. It's a Blumhouse movie. They usually have a very, very good marketing apparatus for their films. It's a movie that I think cost $9 million to make and made $30 million in its opening weekend, which is a huge opening for a movie of that size. It's going to go on to be very, very profitable and very successful. And I think the big thing with this movie, the big thing that everyone was saying is it not only did it blow away its projections, but 50% of the audience was under 25 years old. So they successfully, with this movie, got the youngest generation, the generation that everyone's striving to win over, to come out to the theater and see this movie. And I mean, the way they did it is not just that they cut a good trailer, which I mean it is, but they did this thing that is so delicate, that is memification and TikTokification of movies, but in a way that doesn't make it seem like it's old dudes coming in and saying, how do you do, fellow kids? I'm here on TikTok, come see my movie. Because like, first of all, it's just like the perfect movie for it, because this Megan movie is like it almost seems like designed to be a meme, right? It's a movie about a doll, and in the movie the doll is like dancing to a Taylor Swift song. So it's like you can just take that image of the doll like doing a TikTok dance and just literally throw that on TikTok, and it's like bam. And then the way TikTok works is someone will grab that, reply to it, or duet it, and then do the same dance and it's just like becomes viral like that. It's like this kind of organically viral type thing. And it's just really fascinating to me because like this is something that obviously not everyone can box up and package and sell, because only certain movies are able to do it. Everyone's trying to do it, but only certain movies and certain properties are able to do it. And I'm just really fascinated by the idea that like something like Marvel gets so big that they couldn't possibly try to do stuff like this. This is, by the way, the movie last year that succeeded in doing this was another horror movie called Smile. I think I referenced it on Kingslingers this week, but that movie was a movie just about like creepy people that smile, and like a monster like looks like a person but they're just smiling really creepily. And they hired people to go to public events like baseball games and just stand behind home plate creepily smiling right into the camera with a shirt on that said the name of the movie. And so it's like what we're seeing now is creativity and marketing matters in film sales like more than it probably ever has in the past. We talk about trailers as an art form, and they certainly are, and what trailers can and can't do, and they still matter certainly, but they matter less now than everything around it. And that's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, especially when you have a fixed marketing budget, and you've got to decide how to allocate that marketing budget. Maybe corners are being cut on the trailers because they have to spend that money doing other things that are more high return actually. I don't know, maybe that's or even just like not only do you have to cut the trailer, you used to just be able to show it on like TV. Now you have to show it on 17 different platforms.
Yeah.
And that I don't know if that's more expensive or not. It seems like it could be more expensive.
Well, do you remember like when all movie trailers started having that like 6-second intro to the movie trailers that's just like a hyper like fast forwarded version of what you're about to see?
The trailer
and like
for the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone was like, what the hell is this for? And what it's for is the skip ad button on YouTube that appears after 6 seconds. So they were just all cutting a hyper quick version of that you would see in the 6 seconds before you could hit skip ad on YouTube. And like that's just the way the industry changes around these kind of things.
It's hilarious. Yeah. That is really interesting. I don't normally, think a lot about trailers unless there's a really good one, right? And sometimes there's a really good trailer. Like I remember being obsessed with like Lord of the Rings trailers, but
yeah,
maybe that's just because I was young. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it just continues to be this thing of how do we get people to go to the movies? Because people want to go to the movies, right? I think the success of Avatar, which, by the way, we haven't talked about how The Way of Water is doing since we did our initial review, outstandingly, by the way. Shocking us, not at all. This movie is doing very well. I think that it was the first time in like since James Cameron that the third week of a movie made more money than the second week of the movie. That doesn't happen anymore, and it happened for The Way of Water. The movie's doing very well. But so that movie, this Megan thing, Top Gun last year, people want to go to the movies. They just need to be sold on it, because going to the movies is an expensive thing. It's a hassle. It's especially when there's so much more entertainment at your fingertips at home. You need to find a way to get people to be there. And the movies, like, this is the second year in a row where there was a Steven Spielberg movie that is very, very good. Last year was West Side Story. Excellent, wonderful movie. This year is Meet the Fabelmans, a movie that you probably hadn't even heard of. One of my favorite movies of 2022. Really, really wonderful, remarkable. Spielberg at the top of his game again. Nobody saw these movies. Nobody saw, and like Spielberg used to be a name that would get people out to the theater just by its very nature, and that's not even true anymore. So it's like, how do we do it? How do we get people out there? People are thirsting for movie theater experiences. They just need to be sold on them, and it's stuff like Megan. It's stuff like this kind of really fascinating viral marketing that succeeds in memifying something. And I mean, you could maybe like, it's almost not even fair to say that, because like maybe part of the reason the movie was greenlit in the first place was someone read the script and we like the robots doing a TikTok dance. Yeah, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. So like it may be a chicken and egg situation, but I don't know. I just, it's really fascinating in a world where like we're increasingly like doom and gloom about the state of film, while also celebrating like movies doing very well in select certain instances.
Yeah, there's definitely just a shift happening. It would be interesting to study, the shifts in all of these things over the years that were maybe happening, in the 90s and 2000s, and we just weren't really aware of them because we were not paying attention and clued in like that. Because I'm sure everything has been changing continuously forever. I do think COVID was a discontinuous disruption that led to a sudden shift in behavior that was really unlike what was before it. But at the same time, it's things will continue to shift from here, right? So in what direction, we're not sure yet. I just keep noticing in myself, and I think it's fair to say the people that I know, that like the idea of just staying in and chilling on a Friday night used to be, loserly behavior, and now it's just like I think nothing of it. What like going out, that sounds like a hassle. I don't want to. And that
yeah, I mean, it's hard to know if that's just age or just culture, True.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And then, there's a whole generation of young people who, like, during those years when they would have been going out seeing a lot of movies with their friends, they didn't do that. And so that's a habit that was never even instilled in them in the first place. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think that, reaching out for different ways of marketing things is something they have to do. And it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Yeah, I don't know. We will see. Now, all I know right now is I got to go see that Dancing Robot movie, man.
Yeah,
I really actually do want to see it.
So I will say, my oldest doesn't really care about the new Marvel films, despite being a Marvel fan in general. But she did tell me she wants to see Megan. So they succeeded in marketing to the 10-year-old.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I'm glad. I don't know if she realizes how much of an actual horror movie it is. So I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know either. And I will have to figure that out. It's a challenge for Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Matt. I think that's going to do it for us this week. If you had any opinions on Ridley Scott on Alien Covenant, if you are an Alien Covenant stan, if you're one of the few out there, we definitely want to hear from you. I want to know, is it just that the good half of the movie so outweighed the bad half that you fell in love with it, or did you like the bad half of the movie stuff? Please let us know. Reach out to us. You can find us via email, doofmedia@gmail.com, or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia. Of course, you can always go to our subreddit r/doofmedia, where you will find a post for this episode, and that'd be a great place to let us know why you love Alien Covenant.
Yeah, and if you're not subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to click that button and never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else that podcasts can be found. And also, by the way, we are starting reading The Shining over on Kingslingers. In case you are, whether or not you're aware of the existence of Kingslingers, we have a second podcast called Kingslingers. Where we cover Stephen King novels, and we are just now starting The Shining. Really enjoying The Shining so far. You've probably heard of it. I'm very surprised at how much I'm enjoying it, even considering that I basically know the story already. So just FYI.
Yeah, check that out. It's still time to catch up. We're only 13 chapters into the book, or will be as of next week. So perfect time to jump on board Kingslingers as season 3 really starts to ramp up here. Mm-hmm. Also, if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels. Get a whole bunch of new bonus stuff, bonus episodes, all kinds of really cool stuff. Just tons of fun happening over there. So please consider supporting us. Keep helping us keep these very bright. There's very bright lights in front of me. Help keep those on, because I need them. We need them
to stay awake late enough to do this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review does help us to get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. Next week, the what's the third to final? What's the phrase for third to final, Matt?
I don't think there's a word for that.
No, well, maybe there should be. The point is, next week we will be getting closer and closer to the end of our Ridley Scott project with his 2017 film, All the Money in the World. So check back next week to see that. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.